Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode. And here in season 4 of the Top Cyber Pro podcast, I'm founder and creator of TopCyberPro.com, Jim West, and the guest today is Thomas Roccia. I hope I didn't butcher your last name. And again, for anyone watching this, I apologize about my voice. I'm just slightly under the weather, but we're going to power through this episode because we got a lot of great stuff to talk about with this gentleman right here. So, without further ado, Thomas, tell us a little bit about what you do and what is the great stuff you're doing in the industry.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks for the invitation. I'm currently working as a senior threat researcher at Microsoft, and my role is mainly to understand different kind of malware and tracking threat actors' behaviors. And I'm also, since 3 years right now, we are also working more on generative AI and working about how we can implement generative AI for cybersecurity and mainly threat intelligence and malware analysis. So this is where I am today, and yeah, I'm based in Australia. I'm French, but I'm based in Australia since almost 4 years right now, and yeah.
Wonderful. And since you're based in Australia, and so this is just a lot of colleagues I know that work in like threat intelligence, particularly malware analysis and reverse malware engineering that I know live in like New Zealand, Australia, and some folks do live on the West Coast because the time zones are somewhat conducive because most exploits are time-based as far as like whether it's a logic bomb or other type of malware. And so I'm assuming you're in the region for a good reason. So let's dig a little bit into the work that you do with Microsoft. So with a job, you usually have like the official title, but we all know that sometimes you wear more than one hat, meaning there's certain specialties that you have with that job title. So could you maybe start with, hey, my job title is this. You mentioned a senior threat analyst, or I'm sorry if I got the title wrong, but there's different components of the work that you do. So could you maybe step us through it, kind of?
Right. I'm in the Defender team at Microsoft. So our role is basically to protect our customers. So we are doing a lot of research around malware and attackers' tactics and techniques. And the goal is basically to document everything, to understand the threat landscape, the operating methods, and how a malware will be deployed, how a malware will abuse about the Windows operating system and all that kind of things. So the role is really like a research role. And I mentioned generative AI because we are doing a lot of work around that as well, how and understand how we can practically use the technology with the work we used to do, because the work is changing and evolving, as you know, with all the new technology. And our role as a researcher is to understand all the landscape of the new technology and practically apply that for some of the research we are doing.
Mhm. Now, a company like Microsoft, which is one of the largest companies on the planet that service a global customer base, it's one of the most used operating systems next to open source versions of operating systems. But as far as a non-open source operating system, it's the largest in the world. And with their huge customer base that expands, 160 plus countries, I'm sure it's a big challenge to protect. You're not only just worried about protecting the obviously the code and your customers, and there's several products other than the operating system. I mean, we got Office Online, you got a plethora of applications that fall under the Microsoft umbrella. So I'm sure it's a daily challenge because as most people that do know about code, anytime there's an update where you're trying to fix one thing and you're adding additional code or correcting code, sometimes you introduce another flaw because that's just the nature of constant process improvement, which Microsoft is famously known for developing that, meaning put a product out to market that is as secure as possible and then continually improve it and secure it. And so you'll see Microsoft updates almost every day for folks that have to do like patch management, vulnerability management. What has been like let's say, the last 6 months to a year? What have you seen from your research and analysis as a trend for things that, and again, if something you're free to talk about, but what have you seen from your perspective of trends in the threat intelligence world?
Well, it depends. Like as I said, I've been working a lot with generative AI because I also think that the field is changing with that kind of technology, and the security industry is currently catching up with that kind of technology, and we are still at the beginning as well. So there is plenty of work to do and opportunities in the horizon, but. I don't know. I think the field is changing the way we are operating thanks to that kind of technology, because you can speed up your analysis process, you can speed
Mhm.
up your workflow, and this is very exciting to see how the technology can be leveraged for some of the tasks we used to do before that was very time consuming, or very tedious. So I think the field is evolving in kind of toolings and the way we used to work with previous tasks. And I think also attackers are obviously catching up as well with the technology, and probably trying to exploit this kind of technology, such as LLMs and agentic AI and all that stuff as well. I believe that the field will change. It's already changed actually, but we just starting to see what is currently happening. And I think it will be potentially exponential in the next years, but it's hard to say because it's moving fast, and every week there is like a new release of a new technology, a new model, or something which is changing the way you used to work before. So it's kind of keeping the pace of what is new and trying to understand what it will be in 6 months. So hard to say. I got some personal opinion, but probably maybe for another discussion.
No worries. Those two key words you mentioned there. One, obviously, speed, right? AI, and you mentioned exponentials as well. And so the best description I had, Nick Shalon from Ask Sage AI gave me a great explanation. It's like as if each member of your team is now 50x. So now they're free to do more other type of tasks that they were bothered with all the busy, time-consuming tasks. Now they're freed up to do even more detailed analysis of what they're looking at. And so the way I took that is, before when you think about analysis of large data sets, it's like, as a single person, you could take one cup of water out the ocean to analyze that, right? Well, now with AI, it's like you're taking 50 cups because you have this tool that's now able to enable you to analyze more and to have a bigger picture. So I love the fact that we're able to use it for good, use it to help defend our systems and networks and data. Um, you're one of these guys that since you're in the right region, where a lot of great malware analysts and engineers and folks work 24/7 pretty much, I consider you on the front lines of cyber defense, right? And so with that, I know that obviously most attacks, as I say, are time-based. So you get to be on the front line and see the attacks as they come in. Is there any stories that you could share of some of these attacks? I know that due to NDAs and confidentiality, you might not be able to go into a lot of detail. But could you maybe share with us like an attack or two that you've got this witness from like the 0 hour?
Yeah, so before working at Microsoft, I was working for McAfee, and I was a threat intelligence analyst and also an incident responder. So I've been working a lot on different kind of incident response around the world. And one of the biggest cyber attack I've been working on, and that was kind of like a game changing in my career, I guess. Was the NotPetya case in 2017, and this is a case that I documented as well in my book. So I think this one is a really good story, because back in the day, in 2017, it wasn't super, this kind of cyber attack at scale wasn't super common. The previous one was WannaCry, which was a big one as well in terms of impact around the world. And NotPetya was a similar magnitude, I would say. And so I've been working on at the time I was working for McAfee, and I've been working on the incident response for one of our big customer, and it was very challenging and interesting at the same time, because the impact was so broad, and the technical aspect of the attack was also very interesting. It was a supply chain attack, as you may know, and it was very interesting to investigate that from day zero, and trying to understand the full story, and understanding as well the containment and how to deal with that. So I think this one was one of the biggest one in my career in terms of personal impact, if that makes sense. And then after that, I've been working on a lot of different use cases and different cyber attack as well. Some of the well known, such as the SolarWind attack, or even the 3CX 2 years ago, or even last year the XZ attack, which was a big one as well. And if you think about it, it seems like the biggest cyber attack in the history are also related to supply chain attack, which is kind of interesting to think about it. At least the one that I discussed, the NotPetya case, the 3CX, SolarWind, and even the XZ are kind of supply chain attacks,
Mhm.
and I think it's relevant to discuss about that today because the risk is still omnipresent, and this is something that probably which is very hard to contain and to understand and also to investigate. But yeah, couple of cyber attacks that I've been working on, which was very interesting. Some of them were personally impactful, and some of them were also very challenging to analyze. The exit attack was super um, sophisticated, something probably one of the most sophisticated one I've been able to investigate. But yeah.
Got it. So when you mention, we hear this word sophistication when it comes particularly to like APTs, advanced persistent threats, as well as, nation state level and funded type of hacker groups and attack groups. Um, from your perspective, and again, I know your opinions are your own, do you believe that we've seen a significant increase in nation state level attacks, or do you still believe it's cyber crime and cyber criminal organizations? Or is it just kind of depends on the day?
It's hard to say. I got as well some opinion on that, but it's hard to say, and it's also a matter of so every vendors have their own visibility as well and capability. So there is no, I don't think there is a silver bullet for or silver answer for that, but yeah, it's evolving. Of course, it's different than 10 years ago,
Yes.
and 20 years ago, obviously, but because we have a lot of more connected devices, and a lot of also the geopolitical context and everything is a bit different as well. So it's evolving, it's changing, it's completely different than 10 years ago. In terms of proportion and rate and all that stuff, I don't have any clear number.
No worries. You mentioned earlier about a book you published, I think it was 2023, Visual Threat Intelligence. And so for folks, don't even bother Googling it. I'll put the link to the book in the description below to save you that Google search. But can you tell us a little bit about what inspired the book and a little bit about what the book's about?
Yes, sure. So visual threat intelligence it's a concept. It's something that I had in mind for quite a lot of time actually. And the concept is basically blending text explanation with visual augmentation. So the idea was to create a book which is very digest, very fun to read, something that you can pick on like during your break, or when you are relaxing, just to learn more about threat intelligence and so on. But it's also a guide that you can keep close to your desk and make some reference when you need it. So the goal of visual threat intelligence is basically to explain technical content in a digest way with visual augmentation. So basically, you have the text on the left, which explain technical concept, and you will have a visual on the right page that will augment what you are currently reading. So I think it's a good blend because from the feedback I get from the community, people really enjoy to have this kind of mix between the text and the visual, because the visual will helps uh, you know anchor your learning directly into your mind. And I think a lot of people are learning with visual explanation. So the book is kind of a concept. When I published it, I didn't know like if people will really enjoy it or not, because we used to have like book like that which are
Yes.
super heavy and super something that you have to spend time to study to understand. And I wanted something completely different, something that can democratize threat intelligence, and something which is very easy and fun to read. So it's a light read, but at the same time it's also very technical and very there is different kind of concept I'm discussing in depth. And I'm also discussing about some of the cyber attack I've been working on. Some of them we discussed just before, and the goal was also to make some return of experience from what I did before.
Awesome. Well, thank you for creating that book and adding the visuals to take, like I said, really complex subject matter and text and make it super easy to fill in the blanks and understand it and remember it, which is the most important thing for people is to remember. You've also created other
Absolutely.
things. So you're an author of this wonderful book that you made in 2023, but you've also been part of creating some tools and so forth. So I have some notes down here for Nova Framework and the Yara Toolkit. So can you maybe tell us what these are and what's the story behind these tools?
Of course. So I'm gonna start with the Yara toolkit. The Yara toolkit was actually a tool that I've built during the 100 days of Yara, which is a challenge where every day during 100 days you are producing a Yara rules, learning something about Yara, creating a tools, doing some documentation and so on. And I did that during this challenge because I wanted to let the community to access about some of the tools people have been using, but something which is very easy to use. So Doc Yara is a kind of Yara Toolkit is a toolkit for Yara where you can create your own Yara rules, debug it, test it against a sample, and so on. And what I did with with Yara Toolkit, I created another tool which is Doc Yara. And Doc Yara is an agent which is using the Yara documentation, and basically it's a chatbot where you can interact directly with Doc Yara to create a Yara rules, get some information about how to build the Yara rules, how to optimize a rule as well. And it was very interesting to build that, and it's completely free to access. You just have to log in and you can practice a little bit with Yara. So that was for Yara Toolkit.
So before we go much further, for people that are like hearing this word Yara for the first time, Yara stands for yet another recursive acronym, and so it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing because within the hacker community, things are very descriptive and visual within the name. So when you hear like WannaCry or all these different names that we attribute to these malware and attacks, they're usually tongue-in-cheek. So yeah, yet another recursive acronym, Yara, and so what a wonderful tool to have created. And so, Thomas, if you provide me the link to where people can access the tool or download,
Sure.
I'll include it in the description below. So there's this other one called Nova Framework. So what does Nova stand for, and what is this? What does this allow people to do?
Right. So Nova is my new baby. So Nova, to give you the full story, to the complete story. So I think it was maybe 2 years ago or 1 year ago. I don't remember. I think OpenAI released a threat report and they discussed about attacker TTPs using their model, and they describe some of the terms such as LLM assist for some of the action they were trying to do, threat actor were trying to do, such as, for example, developing malware or creating misinformation campaign, creating a fake recruitment, page and all that stuff. And I was super interesting about it because I thought to myself, wow, this is interesting because it's a new kind of TTP, tactic, technique, and procedure, new kind of operating methods that we can see from threat actors. And I thought to myself, well, this is interesting, but how do you make sense of it? And how do you get to, analyze this kind of information? And then I started to realize that maybe prompt could be a new kind of indicator of compromise, and maybe something that will be useful for the industry will be to have a tools that let us hunt for this kind of information. So this is how I started to work on Nova. So basically Nova is a prompt pattern matching, which means it's kind of Yara, but it's tailored for prompt. So basically what you can do with Nova, you can create detection rules that will match a specific patterns in your prompt. So with the Nova rules, for example, you can create a match for specific strings, specific keywords using regex as well. Imagine if you want to match on, I don't know, like PII data, such as, for example, credit card information or email addresses, then you can create a regex rules to match on this kind of information. And
Wonderful.
then also I did the semantic detection. Semantic detection is basically where you want to understand the meaning of a prompt in that case, or a sentence, and then you want to match on this specific meaning. So I'll give you a practical example. Imagine you have a prompt where an attacker is trying to abuse of the system to create malware that will evade antivirus. So we'll probably write a prompt such as write a piece of code in Python that will bypass Defender antivirus, for example. But then this kind of information is very hard to detect with keywords and regex. But with a semantic meaning, basically, you can say, okay, in my rule, I want to detect evasion mechanism used in malware. That's enough to detect this kind of patterns and this kind of prompts. And it will not only detect this specific prompt, but it will detect also all the variation of this specific prompt. And the last one is the LLM as a judge. I'm using LLM to into my detection rules in Nova to estimate and evaluate if the prompt is harmful or not. And it's up to the user to define the detection rules he wants based on the pattern he wants. So I think Nova is kind of new because there is nothing like that in the industry right now. When you are using prompt firewall or security application that are filtering prompt, it's basically a black box where they are using potentially a custom models or some inbuilt detection, but you don't really know what happened in the background. And it's also very tailored for jailbreak or prompt jailbreaking or prompt evasion or these kind of things. But imagine tomorrow if most of the organization are using LLM in-house, they want to have a way to hunt for the telemetry and to monitor how the user are using the generative AI system. So Nova is something that can answer that because you can create patterns and detection rules based only on what you want to trigger and what you want to hunt. And it's not only a black box where you have, of course, you can use like a set of predefined Nova rules, but it's also like if you want to, today, if you want to detect, for example, for misinformation attempt, there is no tools today that allows you to do that because it's very specific and it's not specifically harmful in the sense of it will exploit a vulnerability or something. It's just the normal behavior of the LLM itself. So with Nova, you can basically create a detection rules that will match on misinformation prompt or trying to create some misinformation contents or fake news or these kind of things, and you will have the detection ready just by the detection rules you created. So Nova is basically a prompt pattern matching, which is very flexible and customizable.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for creating these wonderful tools for industry that are free to use, folks. Again, everything he's talking about, he's not charging money for it. So he's created this for the benefit of the global community, and what a wonderful gentleman here for doing so for improving security globally. And the links for all of those tools will be in the description below. There's a lot of things you did mention in there, and so I wanted to get back to a couple of the points you had mentioned. But you mentioned TTPs, tools, techniques, oh goodness.
Procedure.
Procedures. Thank you.
Procedures.
So, I've had a few folks. So I had John Baker from the Center for Threat Informed Defense on the podcast earlier this season. I'm sorry, in season three, and other folks from MITRE. And so the MITRE attack framework, is based on these TTPs and so forth. How different is your approach from like the MITRE attack framework? And I know there's a couple of other like cyber kill chains and other frameworks for this, but and again, if you can't speak to it due to confidentiality with Microsoft, but is there a nuanced or a different perspective approach that Microsoft is going about TTPs?
No, I don't know actually. I'm not really aware about that. I think there is a lot of work to do around this, like trying to
Yes.
document, and that's what I'm trying to do as well with Nova. I published something last week, I think, or this weekend. I published something which is a kind of, I'm trying to formalize everything, like such as LLM TTPs, indicator of compromise for prompts. So I coined a new term which is indicators of prompt compromise, which is basically trying
Ah,
to identify prompt as something that could be harmful. So I'm trying to formalize everything. I'm in discussion with a lot of people in the industry, and it's super new actually. So there is everything to do and to build, in my opinion. And so I'm trying right now to mind the gap and to understand where the industry is going with this kind of technology, because since it's going super fast, you need to understand also the risk and to understand how to monitor everything. And my work with Nova and the IOPC indicator of prompt compromise is some attempt to understand the threat landscape using generative AI and how we can have visibility around everything.
Wonderful. And so just to add some more context too, Microsoft is one of the leaders in other technology areas as well. So for example, a lot of buzz started about 3.5 years ago around a concept of architecture called zero trust architecture. And so not to digress too much from our topics today, but zero trust architecture, some of the components of it is a really strong, what used to be called IDAM or IAM, identity access management. And so in it, they had to include things such as user and entity behavior analysis, UEBA and UBA. And that entity word throws a lot of people off. It's because the rise of LLMs and AI generative entities, if you will, that would be attacking a network and so forth. So that's really interesting to see how ZTA has certain components looking for that prompt type of activity, whereas you're not doing IOPC. I love this how at both ends we're coming to trying to secure things. So I like that. We could talk a lot about the different experiences. I'm sure you got stories, but I want to give you one more opportunity because, again, you do work the front lines of cyber threat intelligence and analysis. Whether your time with Microsoft or McAfee, is there a funny story or humorous story that you could share with us about something that you was working on, a team you was working with, or maybe a global collaboration that's humorous?
Mm,
Because I know the work you do is
maybe.
very serious, but sometimes they could be maybe there's a funny story where almost something went wrong, but looking back on it, you can laugh at it.
Yeah, so there is always this kind. I know what you mean, or this kind of funny story. So I got a few of them actually. Probably yeah. I'm trying to think about it. Like, yeah, so, some use case. I'm going to be like more general rather than very
Yeah.
specific. But in some cases, when you are tracking threat actors or malware activity, in some cases you get to get access to some information and so on. So sometimes you can see, for example, that attackers are very lazy, or they let some piece of information that are very easy to understand for you, and then that let you connect the dot of everything. So this kind of things happen sometimes. But yeah, I don't know if I have something funny I could disclose or not. But yeah, this kind of things happen, like when you have like some you know probably some information that could be relevant for a piece of analysis that you are doing, and sometimes you get to know this information just completely like random. Like, I mean, you're not really looking for this kind
Yes.
information, but by looking to a piece of malware you get that data and so on. So it's quite interesting to have been working on that. And yeah.
Wonderful. And then my last question for the technical discussion part is we've seen a minor rise in what's called the living off the land attacks. And so for folks that aren't familiar with this term, what has happened is this some malware packages and attacks that are trying to compromise or hide, if you will, within your enterprise networks and systems with certain tools that are known to the system. So most like endpoint device security systems would not blink an eye with we think of things like PS exec and so forth on the system. These are things that admin administrators use and service desks use all the time to update and run executables remotely in particular. And so what have you seen from your vantage point in regards to living off the land attacks?
So that's a very relevant question, because living off the land are legitimate tools that attackers can abuse to perform some malicious actions, and I think it's very relevant, especially today, because we even talk about like malware-less, like meaning attackers will breach your system without using any kind of malicious
Payload.
file. So it's even more difficult to to detect, and that's why understanding the world procedures and how the operating method is working came into sense, because this is where you try to understand what is malicious, what kind of behavior is malicious compared to something which is legitimate.
Mhm.
And if with malwareless, it's kind of difficult, because if the attackers only use legitimate tools on your system, it's more difficult to find that maliciousness directly, that malicious behavior. But with some patterns and some statistic and information you can get, and also with the experience, you tend to understand what kind of path the attacker will take and so on. But it's very relevant to talk about that, because malwareless become more and more common today, and I think it's also challenging for the organization to detect this kind of threat.
Yeah. And in general, a lot of times when we think about AI and the evolving threat landscape and how things are moving faster and faster and there are just more and more attacks happening that are automated, there's key basic security principles that people should mention. Because when people are hearing this, like, well, what chance do I got of securing my data networks? But there's still some old school, what I call old school principles that everybody should be doing. Your access control is everything, right? Your security groups and your administrator shouldn't have full permissions to root, if you will. There's layers of administrative rights and permissions that you could do, and you can monitor so that when there is privilege escalation, you can catch it earlier via tools like Nova
Exactly.
and other endpoint security tools. So that kind of wraps up our technical discussion part, Thomas. So thank you so much for dealing with the various different questions. So, folks, my guests don't know where we're going to go in our technical discussion. The only part is that when we get to the halfway point, they do have these next few questions, or they're somewhat prepared. But the first part, he's on his toes. So you've done wonderful, Thomas. Thank you for sharing so much information in a short amount of time with us. I do want to give an opportunity because this is my favorite question of the podcast: is if we could go back in time to day one when a younger Thomas said, I want to do cyber. I want to do threat intelligence. This is what I want my life and career to my passion to go. What is the story of your day one that of when you made that decision?
That's a funny question. So I think I don't know if it's day one actually, but I remember one day. I think it's around the 20s, like early 20s, probably 2001, something like that. Like my mom at that time, like having a computer was, or probably it was the end of the 90s. I don't remember exactly, but doesn't matter. Like my mom bought a new computer at home, and it was quite expensive back in the day, for us. And I was super happy to have it and to start to use it and so on. And during that days, we with my friend we used to use MSN. MSN was a famous chat back in the
Yep.
day. And I'm not sure if you remember, but with the MSN era, we used to send like some joke programs, such as stuff that will froze your computer or
Yeah.
open your CD-ROM slot, these kind of things. And I remember one of my friends sent me something through MSN, and it completely froze the computer. Like I couldn't use it anymore. And it was like probably just a week before my mom bought the computer. So it was super new, and I was very scary. Like I thought I broke the computer completely, and I was panicking. I was probably 9 years old. I didn't really know what happened, and I was super panicking and so on. So I just decided to reboot the computer just to see if it will work again after that. And it started, and then everything was back to normal. So I just starting to trying to understand what happened and why after this piece of stuff that my friend sent me through MSN, everything was broken and so on. So I just trying to understand what this stuff was doing, and it was a simple piece of code, but I think it was a batch script if I remember correctly. And I just tried to understand what this bash script was doing and so on. And I think I was hooked, because it was very interesting to me to understand that with some piece of code you can do these kind of things to your computer. So I just get some interest about that and starting to play a little bit more with computer. At some point I've wrote my own joke program that I sent to my friends and so on. And yeah, I think it was just funny to use, and it opens probably a way of possibility back in the day. Something that you can create yourself, and have an impact and all that stuff. So I don't really know. Like I think it was probably the trigger, and and yeah, and probably another trigger was maybe a little bit older, but I'm not sure if you know. I think it's a famous. It used to be a famous French game in France. The name is Adibou. I'm not sure if you know. Adibou was a game, like, but a learning game, and it was very funny. You could learn some stuff, and it was on Windows 95, I believe, like the first version and that stuff. And yeah, it was funny to play with that.
Wow. Well, thank you. I love the fact that it was through pranking and internet pranking and jokes
Yeah.
that sparked the imagination and creativity to get you started at such a young age. You know, I don't know why the story came to me, but there was a time I was working for an organization where I was the manager of a small team, and they had a Microsoft rep come in, and we were doing an upgrade on a particular server in this organization, and a server that was very critical to the operations. And what had happened was overnight, I saw my sysadmin, and he was with the Microsoft guy. He's like, "All right, we're going to do the swap out of the servers, and everything should be fine." Well, at 4 o'clock the next morning, I get a text, and he had been up for 4 hours. It was supposed to only take like 30 minutes to do this changeover, and they didn't want to call me until 4 in the morning because plant management would be in with by 5 o'clock. And so I had rushed to the location and to the server room, and they're just staring at the rack because what had happened was when they put the new server in, there was an issue, and so they went to go put the old server back in, and
Oh,
it wasn't able to log into the domain. And this is back during NT4 days, NT Server 4. And so, long story short, the trust was broken. And, if you understand transitional
yeah,
trust, so the issue was that we couldn't get the server log back on to start pulling the data it needed, which was
wow,
critical. So, we are literally an hour away from potentially having to do a shutdown of all operations, which would have cost, tens of millions of dollars. So there was a particular tool at the time, I won't name it because, yeah, due to the issue, but I was able to have a bootable disk to boot into a prompt to where I knew one thing. I knew that we had our screensaver set to run every 10 minutes to run the screensaver. And what a lot of people didn't know is that when you have things like screensavers, they usually run with local admin rights. And so what I needed to do was be able to, because they couldn't log back in as local admin. And that was the other key part of the story. The trust was broken.
right,
And without being able to log in as local admin, you can't reestablish that trust. So no one knew the password. They checked the password that was in the safe. They even were waking up people that were retired from the company or moved on just to try to grab at straws. So I was able to boot to a C prompt, go into rename user ADM to the screensaver file name, and we had to just reboot and wait 10 minutes. So in 10 minutes, when the system went to call for the screensaver file to run, it was actually running the user admin console. So above that control
right.
delete, the user console luckily popped up in front of it. We were able to go in, reset the local admin password, reboot, log in, reestablish trust. But it's interesting through just coming up with just imagination, right? We're limited by our
Yeah.
imagination. So I love that at a young age, your imagination got, triggered to start exploring this world. And the world is safer because you're in it, Thomas. I know across your career, you've had, and I know you're still super young, so I don't want to make it like you're an old timer like myself, but has there been people that have been influential to you, people that you have admired, looked up to, or mentors or managers that along your career that you kind of want to shine a light on their name because they've been very impactful for you?
Well, there was a lot of people. I would say potentially, probably that sounds maybe cheesy, but probably my mom and my dad, because they were pretty early here, and always encouraging about what I was doing and so on. And my father is a programmer as well, so I get to get to my hands on computer pretty early as well. And I don't know, there is a lot of folks, actually, a lot of French researchers that are known as well in France, and there is a lot of people. So um, I couldn't tell any name because otherwise we are still there tomorrow. But yeah, there's plenty of researcher that I'm thinking about as mainly French researcher, because since I started my career from France, this is where my influence were at first, and then I started to expand to different kind of peoples. I found mentors at McAfee. I found mentors at Microsoft as well. So it's kind of different kind of people. It's more like I'm how can I put that? Like it's more like I'm feeding myself with the experience of the others, if that makes sense. It's more like about like when I found someone inspiring, I will try to understand what he is doing. If he wrote a book or something like that, and try to feed myself with his own ideas. And yeah, I think yeah, there is a lot of people actually in France, good researcher that are amazing, that was there in the industry when I was just a baby, I guess. So yeah, to name a few, there is Paul Wascanier, sorry, which is working at Volexity. There is Cedric Pernet, which is working right now, I believe, at Checkpoint. There is also Thomas Chopitea, which is working at Google as well, to name a few. But there is so many people. I think about also people that were entrepreneur as well. So different kind of a reason. I don't have a single mentor. I have like plenty of friends today, and I just remember watching them when I was at school doing security conferences, and get inspiration from that.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing some of those because none of us got to where we were alone, right? We either had to read books by other folks,
Absolutely,
read articles, study,
I
have
agree.
teachers, professors, mentors all along the way. So I love that you shared it. It's a great opportunity just to kind of say, you know what, I'm a better professional because of them. A lot of folks that might be watching this that are considering getting into like threat intelligence, pen testing, malware analysis, like getting into this world. Are there any websites or resources that you would recommend to someone to say, hey, start either with this website, that website, or hey, this is a YouTube channel by this person that's got a lot of great free information. So, and of course, everything, most people want free, right? Because, information should largely be free. Knowledge is empowering. So, is there anything that you would recommend for folks that are like, hey, I'm really liking what you guys are talking about. I don't really understand it fully, but I want to understand it.
Right. So before jumping to any kind of resources, I think it's very important to define what you really want to do. Either it is threat intelligence, malware analysis, penetration testing, red teaming, doesn't matter, but you have to define what is your goal first. And I don't think there is, honestly, internet is the door to the knowledge, and there is not a single resources to go through it. I think it's just a matter of constantly learning and reinventing yourself, and asking questions and trying to think differently. Keep your open mind. This is really important. Always, I think that there is some people that think that the industry is like that and will never change. That's wrong. It's always changing. Every day there is new things to learn, new things to question, and so on. So that's the number one thing. And the second one is to challenge the status quo. I think it's really important because since it's changing every day, almost every day, it's really important to be able yourself to question why are we doing that? Can we doing it in a different way? Or why this thing is working like that? Can I try to understand how it works and all that stuff? So yeah, I don't think there is a single resources right now with YouTube, ChatGPT, or any kind of LLM. Actually, you have the knowledge at your right at your hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, fingertip. Yeah, and yeah, it's everywhere. Like, I mean, it's even easier right now today than it used to be 10 years ago, because when I was working, when I was learning about malware analysis and reverse engineering, oh, it was very, very difficult. Like, I spent months and months trying to reverse piece of code to understand assembly and understand the technical behavior of Windows and how everything is working and so on. Right now, you just have to copy paste a piece of assembly to any kind of LLM, and you get a pretty good explanation. And tomorrow, you will probably don't need anymore to reverse engineering a full sample by yourself. But it's still interesting for your culture to understand that and to be able to see how it was before to compare with what we do today. So yeah, not a single resources. Unfortunately, I don't have a secret sauce. The only
No
thing is
worries.
to just keep the open mind and always challenge the status quo.
Well, I absolutely love that. Definitely keeping an open mind and be a sponge and absorb, read, watch YouTube, what I call YouTube
Yes,
University, and just join communities. There's so many in every town or city. There's like hackathon, hack
absolutely.
events. There's online communities. Just get involved and start asking questions, and you'll find that at home most communities and groups out there are super welcoming and they're super informative. And if you find a group that's not that informative or welcoming, there's 100,000 other groups. So just get involved and start asking
Exactly.
questions. So I love that.
You know what? You know what? Actually, I have a secret sauce, kind
Okay,
of a
secret
secret
sauce.
sauce. Yeah, there is something that which is a bit contrary to what the people are used to say, which is always focusing on one thing. I believe the complete opposite. Like, I believe that you have to have your core expertise, but if you have like interest in different kind of area, then you should explore them. But always keep in mind to find a connection between this kind of interest with your core expertise. And this is what I always did, actually. Like, for example, generative AI. I'm not interested about generative AI to ask what the weather is in San Francisco or somewhere else. I'm interested to use generative AI for threat intelligence, for malware analysis, for these kind of things. So if you have interest into, I don't know, cryptocurrencies, then for me, like cryptocurrency is also interesting, not for investment, even if it's something interesting, but I'm interesting about how, cyber criminal can leverage cryptocurrencies, how they can launder money and all that stuff. So I always try to connect my interest with my core expertise, which is threat intelligence and malware analysis. So I know it's kind of difficult, especially today, because there is a lot of information and it's sometimes very overwhelming. But I think it's also keep you aware about what's going on, and it lets you be able to discuss with anyone in the industry.
Awesome. Well, this is the part of the podcast where I like to do a speed round of questions, Thomas, and there's no right or wrong
Yes.
answer. So if you'll humor me, this is just our
Okay.
moment of levity. So I'm just going to hit you with some questions, whatever the first answer pops in your head. So we're going to start off with Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars.
Star Wars. Okay, what's your favorite character in Star Wars?
I think it's Dark Vador.
Okay. Cake or pie?
Cake.
What kind of cake?
I love banana bread.
Banana bread. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
The oh goodness, I already forgot my other question on the speed round. My brain's just real blank. What has been your most favorite book of all time that you've read, and what was the last book you've read?
Favorite book? I think it's the Neuromancer from William Gibson. I think it's
No.
Neuromancer from William Gibson. It's a kind of a cyberpunk. I think it's the book
Yeah,
we yeah,
Neuromancer.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, yeah.
Neuromancer. Yeah, sorry, my accent. Yeah,
Oh, no
yeah.
worries.
This one is really good, and yeah, I think yeah, I read it when I was very young, and I really enjoy it. So yeah, and the last book, I'm actually reading a book right now, which is this one, the gap and the gain, which
Awesome.
is something very interesting, which is, when you are always trying to achieve more and so on and so on. It's a good book, I think. It's something that let you think about what the work you are doing and what you try to chase or try to achieve, I would say, and to reflect about everything. So yeah, it's a good book, The Gap and the Gain.
Awesome. And Thomas, if you could share the links for me for all the books and any other resources you want to share, I'll
Of
just
course.
copy and paste it down below.
Sure.
Uh, so at this point, is there any, obviously you do a lot of work and you're at the front lines of cyber threat intelligence and malware analysis, being there in Australia. But a lot of cyber professionals do make time for causes they care about, things they're passionate about. So whether it's a blog or a volunteer work that you may do outside of your day job or charities that maybe you don't have the time, but you contributed your money or you just want to shine a light on. What is some maybe nonprofit volunteer or work that you are passionate about outside of your day job?
Well, I'm really involved in the security community. So every time there is like an event or something like that, I'm always here to help if they need, or to even do a conference talk or talking about some of the project I've been working on. I used to do a lot of mentorship before, but it was very time consuming. So I had to stop it, because I was doing it for free and it was very, very time consuming. And right now there's a lot of people trying to reach out to me. So it was complicated to deal with that and my regular schedule. But yeah, apart from that, yeah, I think my life is, gravitating around cybersecurity in every
Yes, sir.
aspect, in a good way or a bad way. I think for me it's a good way, but yeah, for some people I know they enjoy to do something else. But yeah, I'm always trying to contribute to the security industry because this is where my heart is. And yes.
Well, wonderful. And then we're glad that your heart's in it and that this is your passion. Again, the global community is more secure because of you, Thomas. What I'd like to
Thanks.
do now, Thomas, is, kind of give my guests the final word. So, imagine you're speaking to a room that's from everyone from the receptionist of an organization to the CEO and everybody in between. What is your final word in regards to the work that you do and your perspective?
Yes, my final word is, keep an eye of what is going on in the industry. It's changing fast. What you do today will not be the same tomorrow.
Awesome. Well, Thomas, thank you so much for giving your time. I know you're super busy gentleman, and again, you've been wonderful to share us the knowledge and insights. Thank you for the tools that you created that you're still working on, because I'm sure Nova Framework. If we haven't heard, I didn't hear about it till today, but guess what? I'm looking forward to hearing more about it, and then maybe down the road we can have you maybe do a demo on the podcast at some point, and we can maybe
Absolutely.
see the tool in action. Well, again, thank you so much, Thomas, for being on the Top Cyber Pro podcast.
Thank you, Jim.